A Mafia kingpin stood frozen before the cold, silent grave of his son when he caught sight of a young woman kneeling beside it, her hand wrapped tightly around the small fingers of a little girl. The woman whispered to the child, her voice trembling as though she were holding back a secret she had carried too long. "We have to visit your father," she murmured. Vincent Russo stopped as if rooted to the ground. His heart seemed to forget how to beat. His son, Michael Russo, had died 3 months earlier. Michael had no wife, no children. And yet, that little girl had Michael's amber eyes, the exact same teardrop-shaped birthmark beneath her left ear, a hereditary mark every member of the Russo bloodline carried, and in that suspended moment, she looked toward the headstone and softly said, "Daddy." The world tilted beneath Vincent's feet. He was not a man easily shaken. 38 years in the shadows of the underworld had forged him into something cold, unbending, immovable. But in that instant, he was nothing more than a father confronted with the impossible. He did not approach them immediately. Instead, he stayed beneath the broad, weathered branches of an old oak on the left side of Calvary Cemetery, on the outskirts of Queens, watching in silence. Autumn winds rustled through the yellow leaves, scattering them across the grave that bore the name Michael Russo, born 1988, died 2025. 37 years old. Etched into the stone was a line Vincent himself had chosen. He tried to walk out of the darkness. Despite everything, he had always believed his son was not like him. Michael had studied medicine once, had wanted to be a doctor, but life in Vincent's world had pulled him into violence, into the same path his father had walked. No one in the family had known he had a child. No one had ever mentioned a woman named this. The young nurse wore pale blue scrubs, her face drawn with exhaustion, her eyes deep and swollen as if she had cried for hours. Beside her, the little girl, perhaps 4 years old, with blonde pigtails and a worn lavender sweater frayed at the sleeves, looked up at him. The moment their eyes met, something inside Vincent stuttered. That look, it couldn't be mistaken. She was Michael's second heartbeat. The nurse noticed him, startled. She stood abruptly, pulling the child back, protective and unsure. Vincent's gaze never left the girl. He inhaled sharply, steadying himself, then stepped closer. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice roughened by a tightness he couldn't disguise. The woman hesitated. I'm Emily, and this is Ava, my daughter." Her grip on the little girl tightened. "We didn't mean to intrude. You said..." Vincent struggled to keep his voice steady. "You said she called Michael her father?" Emily lowered her head. "I don't think this is the right time to say anything. I'm sorry." She turned, ready to leave, but Ava turned back, waving at the grave. "Bye-bye, Daddy." Then the small girl ran forward again and placed a tiny drawing on the cold granite slab. Vincent stared as they walked away. When the two vanished beyond the cemetery gates, he finally bent down and picked up the paper. It was a crayon drawing, messy but full of life. A man, a woman, and a child holding hands beneath a bright round sun. In the corner, scribbled in uneven letters, "To Daddy, from Ava." His hands trembled. Memories crashed over him like a storm. Could it be true? Had Michael built a family no one knew about? Could his son, the boy who once swore he would never love, never risk dragging someone innocent into the orbit of the Mafia, have silently created a life of kindness that he never dared share? Vincent Russo, a man who had ordered dozens of deaths without flinching, felt his heart tighten painfully. Clutching the drawing, he turned away from the grave. But only one question echoed in his mind. That little girl, is she truly Russo blood? If you're still here and this story has stirred something inside you, take just 1 second to subscribe to our channel, like and share this video so we can continue bringing heartfelt stories every day. And if you don't mind, where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and tell us which corner of the world this story has reached. We treasure every word you share. Vincent Russo stood unmoving under the soft drizzle, his gaze fixed on the fading silhouettes of Emily and her daughter as they slipped through the cemetery gate, the weight in his chest tightening until he had to clench the drawing in his hand. Everything felt wrong, yet frighteningly right. Michael had never mentioned a relationship outside work, had never spoken of helping a sick child, and certainly never spoken of a woman like Emily. Vincent stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he tried to read every movement, every flicker of emotion. Emily glanced back at him, her eyes wide, her expression a blend of fear, plea, and something else that made him pause. Those eyes, that look they struck him, jolting his heartbeat out of rhythm. The birthmark beneath Ava's ear flashed in his mind again, like an undeniable truth. Michael had the same mark, a rare inheritance the entire Russo family recognized. Vincent inhaled deeply, trying to steady the storm building inside him, feeling the ground shift beneath the weight of a truth he was not prepared to face. He understood that this meeting was not accidental. Emily could not have known the exact location of Michael's grave without a compelling reason. And the child was not ordinary. She was a piece of a secret buried with his son. Emily backed away, her eyes darting, reading Vincent's reaction the way someone reads danger. She stood on the edge of revealing or running, holding a truth she clearly feared. When he stepped toward her, she turned and bolted, lifting Ava into her arms, running across the muddy path, the echo of her footsteps sharp in the quiet cemetery. Rain tapped against her coat, her breath steady, controlled, careful, not the panic of an ordinary mother, but the calculation of someone who knew a powerful force was behind her, someone fleeing from a truth she feared Vincent was close to uncovering. He followed slowly, deliberately, observing everything, the way she held the child, the way her wrist tightened, her eyes never leaving the little girl, every detail lighting up like clues in a puzzle only he could solve. Each quick step of Emily and Ava made his heart sink, yet he did not rush. He measured every pace, studying the small footprints in the mud, the tilt of Ava's head toward the grave, the way Emily scanned the surroundings with alert precision, leaving nothing behind but their fading silhouettes. He noticed the moment her eyes met his, again a flicker of dread, a spark of recognition, and the unmistakable understanding that she had been discovered. Yet she said nothing, only held the child tighter and quickened her pace toward the gate. Vincent stopped where he was, watching them disappear, his mind spinning with 1,000 questions and one certainty. Michael had left behind something monumental, something only those outside the reach of the underworld could know. Every instinct sharpened, every breath deepened. He knew this was the beginning of an investigation that would unravel everything he thought he knew about his son and his family. Every detail, the eyes, the fleeting smile, the birthmark, the hurried escape, was a thread leading him toward the truth Michael had taken to his grave. And Vincent vowed he would follow it to the very end, no matter the cost, no matter how long it took. He would not allow this secret to sink back into the dark. As Emily's shadow vanished completely, he drew a long, steady breath, tightened his grip on the drawing, and followed the muddy footprints, his mind repeating one single, cold, precise question. That child, Ava, is she truly Russo blood? Vincent Russo stood silently, watching the fading silhouettes of Emily and Ava disappear down the muddy path that wound through the cemetery, his hand still gripping the drawing the little girl had unknowingly left behind on the grave. His gaze seemed pulled into every uneven line, every smudged stroke of color that somehow carried a message only someone who truly knew Michael would understand. He bent down, lifting the little card, the cool smoothness of the paper brushing against his fingertips and sending him spiraling into a vortex of memories he could not escape. On the card was the drawing of a man, a woman, and a child holding hands beneath a radiant sun, bursting with childish brightness, and in the corner, written in clumsy, trembling letters, "To Daddy, from Ava." A chill ran down Vincent's spine. He inhaled deeply, trying to steady the wave of emotion threatening to rise. Inside him, every line, every shaky letter, seemed to resurrect Michael's handwriting before his eyes, pulling him back to the days when his son had been a 10-year-old boy with bright, questioning eyes and an endless stream of curiosity. He remembered Michael sitting on the wooden chair in their living room, a book in his lap, asking about the world beyond the streets of Brooklyn, about people Vincent never wanted him to know, about dreams the boy never dared to speak aloud to anyone. He remembered the moment Michael had stepped closer, eyes wide, gaze both earnest and innocent, saying he wanted to be a better man, that he didn't want the name Russo to weigh on anyone else the way it had crushed their family for generations. The card in Vincent's hand now felt like a reminder of every vow his son had buried deep within himself, every secret he had guarded so fiercely that even Vincent had never suspected he was carrying it. Vincent lifted the card closer to his eyes, searching for traces of Michael's handwriting, feeling painfully near and unbearably far from his son all at once. as though Michael were standing beside him, quietly watching with that soft, fleeting smile Vincent hadn't seen since his boy crossed the threshold into adulthood. Those clumsy letters carried something both sweet and devastating, because they proved Michael had taught a child how to love, had offered warmth Vincent had never believed his son capable of in the violent world they had been born into. Vincent closed his eyes, imagining Michael standing in a hospital corridor, soothing pain with his hands, smiling gently at sick children, his eyes full of compassion. Then he saw Ava, her bright amber eyes reflecting the same warmth, reflecting Michael's soul as if it had been reborn inside this small, innocent life. He clenched the card tighter, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions, anger that Michael had kept such a monumental secret, sorrow because his son had done something good without seeking recognition, and an ache that Michael had tried to protect a fragile life all on his own. The wind grew stronger, swirling dried leaves around Vincent's feet, but he continued to stand there, staring down the path where Emily and Ava had vanished. Every detail sharpened in his mind as if replayed in slow motion, the muted autumn light catching the edges of the drawing, the faint earthy smell of wet leaves, the echo of the little girl's voice. And within him, a resolve began to form, steady and unbreakable. He knew Michael had left behind something important, something only those who understood the true meaning of family could uncover. Vincent exhaled slowly, stepping onto the muddy path, feeling his heartbeat thud beneath his ribs, feeling each raindrop settle on his shoulders. His eyes never left the card. He understood now that this was only the beginning, that if he wanted to understand his son and protect whatever Michael had tried so desperately to guard, he would have to follow this truth to its bitter end. In that moment, the card was no longer just a child's drawing. It was a bridge between past and present, between Michael and Ava, and between the dark world Vincent ruled and a world he had never dared to imagine existed. When Vincent returned to the mansion in Queens, the little card still clenched in his hand, his mind churned with questions that no one yet had answers for. Every detail, Emily's eyes, the birthmark on the child's neck, the way she had run clutching her daughter in fear, carved itself deeper into his thoughts. He knew that to understand the truth, he had to find out who Emily Carter really was. Sitting in his office within the security wing of the estate, Vincent rested before a glowing computer screen, the warm yellow light casting long shadows across his stern features. His fingers tapped lightly on the keys as he sifted through public records, hospital directories, and small fragments of information from Michael's former colleagues. Her name appeared, Emily Carter, along with it, an address, a phone number, and her workplace. Vincent felt his pulse tighten, every instinct sharpening like a blade being honed. She was a nurse in the pediatric intensive care unit at St. Mary's Hospital, a place where every hour meant life or death, a place where she had devoted herself to children whose families often had nothing. The more he read, the more he realized how hard her life had been. A single mother in her mid-20s, raising Ava alone in a small apartment in Queens, with peeling paint and creaking wooden floors, struggling every day with impossible work shifts and mounting expenses. A strange mixture of emotions welled inside him, anger that Michael had hidden this, admiration for her quiet sacrifice, and fear for the little girl who carried his son's eyes and birthmark but none of the protection that came with the Russo name. He dug deeper, tracing her income, lifestyle, work hours, the grueling night shifts in the ICU, the shift swaps, the severe cases she handled. Bit by bit, a picture formed of a woman resilient and clever, yet worn down by life, fighting to balance a demanding job with the needs of her child. And Vincent felt his heart tighten again, wondering how Michael had carried this secret for years, how he himself had never known of the woman who gave birth to Ava, and the quiet, relentless sacrifices she'd made. Every piece of data pointed to a life lived on the edge of exhaustion, where the only shield protecting mother and child was Emily's determination and love. And Vincent realized with a sinking weight in his chest that if anything had ever happened to Michael, this woman and his granddaughter, if she truly was his granddaughter, were utterly vulnerable. Easy targets for predators who lurked around the Russo family's shadowy empire. Memories of Michael returned the times his son visited the hospital, the small acts of Tanti P, kindness Vincent had never seen with his own eyes, the softness in Michael's gaze when he brought books or little gifts to sick children fighting for their lives. Every detail returned in vivid color, as though brought back from the dead. It all tightened Vincent's chest with grief and dread, Because now the legacy Michael had left behind was not just a child's drawing or a pair of amber eyes. It was an entire life, a living soul, a secret the entire Russo underworld had never known. And from this moment forward, Vincent understood something with terrifying clarity. Every step he took had to be calculated, controlled, and precise. Emily and Ava were now bound to the destiny he had no choice but to protect. His instincts sharpened, the instincts of a Mafia kingpin now redirected into a silent investigation, careful and relentless, one that left no room for mistakes. Every detail, Emily's tired smile, her wary glances, the rhythm of her shifts, the patterns of her life could determine their safety and unravel the truth Michael had guarded with his life. Vincent exhaled slowly, his eyes fixed on the screen, his mind spinning between past and present, between love and duty, between loss and resolve. He knew with absolute certainty that this journey had only begun, and this time, no one would be able to hide the truth from Vincent Russo. Vincent Russo sat in the darkness of his private office, his eyes fixed on the security feeds he had secretly installed throughout the neighborhood where Emily Carter lived. Every detail on the screen tightened something inside his chest as a black car slowly crept into the narrow alley, and two shadowy figures moved quickly toward Emily's small apartment. He drew in a sharp breath, his hand tightening on the desk, a warning signal rising in his body so intensely it felt like every nerve was pulled taut like a wire. He knew Emily and Ava had no idea what was coming, that she was just a nurse caring for sick children, unaware that Michael had left behind a secret others would kill to uncover. Vincent bolted to his feet, grabbed his phone, and called Tony his most loyal driver and guard his voice cold and decisive, ordering him to get the car ready and follow him immediately to the apartment. Meanwhile, inside that cramped home, Emily was unaware of the danger creeping closer. Ava sat on the floor playing with her toys, not knowing that the back door had just been pried open, and two dark figures were slipping silently inside, their eyes tracking every movement of the mother and child, their steps careful, fast, and purposeful, as they carried tools ready to search and take whatever they had come for. Vincent sped toward the neighborhood, his gaze glued to the phone screen, every second stretching into minutes, his heartbeat quick but steady, his entire mind focused on one thing: getting to the apartment before those men reached them. When he jumped out of the car, his footsteps echoed against the slick, rain-darkened pavement. The world around him blurred into sharp fragments, the crackle of breaking glass, the flicker of a street lamp illuminating two intruders rifling through the home. Vincent lunged forward, using the strength and speed honed over decades of surviving the underworld to strike one of the intruders hard in the shoulder, knocking him off balance. He didn't hesitate, didn't think, he simply moved. He pushed past them and rushed straight inside. His eyes swept the room, landing on Emily, gripping Ava tightly, her face pale with terror and confusion, her eyes pleading and afraid. Vincent's voice dropped low, a thunderous command as he ordered the intruders to freeze. Something in his presence stunned them. This was no ordinary man. This was someone they could not afford to challenge. Emily looked at Vincent with a mix of fear and relief, her arms trembling as she loosened her hold just enough to breathe. She didn't yet understand the full extent of the power the man before her wielded, but she understood one thing clearly: he had come for them. Vincent checked the apartment quickly, eyes sweeping every corner, every shadow, making sure no one else was hiding. Then he turned to Emily, his voice still deep and firm, though softened by something protective beneath the steel. "We're leaving. Keep the child close. Don't speak. Don't do anything else." Emily nodded, clutching Ava, tears streaking her cheeks as she struggled to breathe. She realized Vincent was the only shield she had at that moment. Vincent led them outside. Tony was already there, surveying the alley, ensuring no third man lurked in the dark, and then opening the car door for Emily and Ava with smooth, controlled efficiency. No panic, no hesitation. Every move deliberate and calm. As the car glided down the wet streets, Vincent sat in the back, eyes on the road, but also watching the mother and child. Emily's gaze remained filled with fear, her hands trembling as she held Ava close. The little girl sat quietly, clutching her stuffed bear, but looked out the window with wide eyes, curious, trusting in a way that struck Vincent deeper than he expected. He felt the weight settle firmly on his shoulders, not just the task of saving them tonight, but the responsibility of ensuring that from this night forward, no one would ever dare come after them again. As they drove through the empty streets, the streetlights cast long shadows over old buildings. Vincent pressed his foot harder on the gas, heading for the safe house he had prepared on the outskirts of the city. It was a place where every light and shadow could be controlled, where every entrance was monitored, a place known only to a handful of people he trusted with his life. During the quiet stretch of the drive, Emily clutched her daughter tighter, tears still slipping down her cheeks as she whispered, Are we going to be okay?" Vincent closed his eyes briefly, taking a slow breath, his voice deep and steady when he answered, "Right now, we survive. After that, we uncover everything. No one touches you or the child again." Ava looked at him, then truly looked, and for the first time, Vincent saw trust in her eyes, something fragile and instinctive. He felt the weight of his promise settle like a stone inside his chest. From this moment forward, his duty wasn't the underworld or the empire he'd built. It was them, protecting them, whatever it took. When the car reached the safe house, Vincent ushered them inside. The dim lamp cast a soft glow across the room as he stood in the doorway, watching Ava play on the pale blue rug with the stuffed bear Emily had brought. Then he saw it. When Ava tilted her head, a soft lock of blonde hair slipped aside, exposing the small teardrop-shaped birthmark beneath her left ear. Identical. Vincent's breath caught. His steps slowed as he approached, pointing gently beneath the child's ear. His voice was low, trembling despite him trying to control it. "Did you know about this mark?" Emily looked, puzzled, and nodded slowly. "Yes, she's had it since birth. I always thought it was just a normal birthmark." Vincent shook his head, his voice breaking in a way he hadn't heard from himself in years. "No, Emily, it's not random. It's the Russo mark." He knelt closer, studying the birthmark, his heart thudding painfully, a mix of fear and awe washing over him. Every tiny feature, the bright amber eyes, the innocent smile, even the way Ava breathed, felt like echoes of Michael. It was as if Michael were standing in the room, living again through this small, unsuspecting child. Emily's eyes filled with tears, confusion flickering in her expression, as she watched Vincent zero in on something she'd never once considered important. But the depth in his gaze, the weight of it, made her realize this meant something far greater than she understood. Vincent gently touched the Raiders' birthmark with trembling fingers, the cold fear and warm ache mingling painfully in his chest. Memories of Michael flooded him, his childhood laughter, his little hand gripping Vincent's shirt, the rare moments of tenderness between father and son, and now all of that seemed to live inside Ava. He stepped back, drawing in a long breath, speaking more to himself than anyone else. If this is true, then Ava isn't just the child we saved tonight. She's the last living piece of Michael, my granddaughter. Emily tightened her hold on Ava, her eyes shining with uncertainty and fear. She didn't fully understand what this revelation meant, but she sensed the shift. This wasn't simply protection anymore. This had become blood, legacy, destiny. Vincent sat beside Ava, watching every little movement, every frown, every curious glance, each one striking him with a painful familiarity. He looked at Emily with steady resolve. "We need to know, now. We need to be certain who she is, to Michael and to me." Emily froze, her heartbeat pounding. She understood that from this moment, the truth wasn't just a secret, it was a matter of survival. Vincent watched Ava play, her tiny hands clutching her stuffed toy, her eyes bright with innocence. And he saw Michael in everything, her joy, her stubbornness, her curiosity. A new resolve crystallized inside him. From now on, Ava was not just a child in need of protection. She was the most precious possession the Russo family had left. He drew a slow breath, his voice firm yet softened by something deeply human. "No one touches her. No one touches you. We protect her, and we find the truth. This isn't the time for doubt, this is the time to act." Emily nodded, holding Ava close, realizing that Vincent wasn't merely a rescuer, he had become the shield between her child and a world that would swallow them whole if given the chance. Standing by the window, Vincent stared out into the night, determination settling into his bones. From this moment forward, every move he made would be guided by one heartbreaking, sacred truth. Ava was the last piece of Michael left in this world, and he would protect her with everything he had. Vincent Russo couldn't take his eyes off Ava as she sat in the high chair, swinging her worn-out stuffed bear with innocent, rhythmic movements. Something about her softness, her quiet curiosity, reminded him so vividly of Michael that his heart tightened with a blend of anticipation and dread. He knew the next step was confirming everything he feared and hoped at once. Truth would come only from science, from numbers that could not be denied. So he called Dr. Harrison, the geneticist who had worked with the Russo family for years, his voice low and commanding as he ordered an immediate DNA analysis. He watched Emily standing beside Ava, her arms wrapped around the child, her eyes full of worry and exhaustion. Whatever the result would be, their lives would never be the same. Blood samples were drawn carefully, vials labeled, forms filled out. Vincent stood beside the table, not blinking, watching every step as if the heartbeat of the whole room depended on the movement of those hands. Dr. Harrison explained each detail of the process: genetic markers, probability thresholds, comparisons, and Vincent listened to every word, yet time felt distorted, every second stretching painfully long, until all he could hear was the pounding of his own heart and the thoughts of Michael flooding through his mind. When the first results appeared on the screen, Vincent's hand clenched the edge of the table. His palm had gone cold, his eyes locked onto the clusters of numbers, the tables, the unmistakable percentages taking shape, and then the truth solidified. Emily was not a stranger, she was his biological granddaughter, Michael's daughter, and Ava, the child sitting in the high chair, was the last living great-grandchild of the Russo family. For a moment, Vincent's heart seemed to stop. Shock, grief, and a fierce surge of emotion washed through him, something inside him breaking and mending in the same breath. The agony of losing Michael softened just a fraction, replaced by something heavy and sacred, a new responsibility. Emily held Ava tightly. Her voice trembled as she whispered, I'm his granddaughter, and she's your great-granddaughter?" Vincent nodded, his expression firm yet softened with rare warmth. He drew in a long breath, his voice rough. "Yes, Ava is what remains of Michael, she's ours, and from this moment on, no one is allowed to harm her, or you." Emily's heart pounded, tears streaming down her face. All the fear of the night mingled with astonishment and something new, a faint, fragile trust in the man before her. She realized that from now on, every step they took wouldn't be about running anymore. It would be about protecting their blood, protecting the last living thread of the Russo line. Vincent crouched beside Ava, studying her amber eyes, the same warm fire he remembered from Michael. Pain rose in him, but so did an unexpected sweetness. He whispered softly, voice steady and full of vow, "You're my great-granddaughter, your family, and I will protect you with everything I have." Ava looked at him with innocent, trusting eyes, as though she sensed how important this moment was. Emily wrapped her arms around them both, overwhelmed by relief and tension all at once, knowing that every decision ahead would determine not only their safety but the future of a secret Michael had guarded alone. Vincent rose to his feet, gaze drifting toward the window, scanning the roads that led into the dark. Weight settled on his shoulders, an ancient, living responsibility. From this moment forward, his choices weren't about the empire he once built. They were about blood, about Michael's legacy, about keeping Ava and Emily alive. The DNA results struck him like a blow, but they also opened a path forward, a reminder that family, blood, was worth more than power or money, and that from this second on, every move he made would revolve around them, around protecting Ava, protecting Emily, around keeping the Russo bloodline alive, no matter the threats lurking in the underworld Michael had once walked. Vincent exhaled slowly, feeling the heavy but sacred responsibility settle into him. Life would never be normal again, but now, at least, he had the answer. And the answer, both painful and miraculous, had become the only hope for the family Michael left behind. Vincent Russo sat in the safe house, the warm yellow light falling across his stern face as he held Michael's digital journal in his hand. Page after page of data flickered across the screen: call logs, hidden notes, locations Michael had visited in the final months of his life. They formed fragments of a secret world Vincent had never known. He scrolled through them silently, seeing the patterns emerge. Michael hadn't only cared for Emily and Ava, he had shielded them, hidden them from some of the most dangerous enemies within the underworld. Every note showed it, every call proved it. Each hospital visit, each meeting with a doctor, every act of kindness had been cloaked in secrecy. Michael had left no trace behind. He had refused to speak their names. Vincent drew in a sharp breath, a mix of pain and reverent awe settling inside him. For years he believed he knew his son. But now, through these logs, Michael appeared as a silent protector guarding a family Vincent never even knew existed. Emily sat beside him, holding Ava as she stared at the screen. Her hands trembled as she read the entries how Michael had hidden her, how he concealed Ava's existence, how he had made every medical decision with caution. She realized that for years, she had been protected without even knowing it. Every worry she'd carried, every tight moment she'd felt, Michael had seen it coming and shielded her from the shadows. Tears ran down her cheeks, both from grief and from the sting of knowing she never understood how much he had done. Vincent turned another page. Names appeared, names tied to Mafia factions, warning signs, coded notes about surveillance, about threats. Michael had mapped every danger, every potential leak that could expose Emily and Ava. There were lists of gifts he had brought to Ava during hospital visits, entries about protecting her identity, every action pointing to the same truth. He knew one mistake could cost them their lives. Vincent closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling deeply. The responsibility now felt heavier than ever. Michael had protected them as long as he could. Now the burden had passed to him. Vincent turned to Emily, his voice low. "My son, Michael kept your existence hidden to protect you from the world I created. He didn't hide you for himself, he did it because he knew if I knew, your lives could become targets." Emily trembled, hugging Ava close, tears falling freely. She finally understood the magnitude of what Michael had carried. He had gambled with his own life to ensure Ava stayed untouched by the cruelty around them. Vincent continued reading. He saw recordings of Michael calling doctors about Ava's health, detailed plans for anonymous warnings, quiet visits, and little gifts left behind. Every action once seemed ordinary, private, but now they revealed a deeper truth. Michael had built an invisible shield around her. Vincent turned to Emily again, his voice steady and cold as iron. "From now on, anyone who comes after you or the child will pay. Michael protected you in silence. Now it's my turn, and I will not let anyone destroy what he died to protect." Emily nodded, tears streaming, clutching Ava tightly. The three of them remained there in the quiet of the safe house, bound not by chance, but by blood, sacrifice, and the weight of a legacy that had been hidden for years. Vincent understood then that he was no longer just the man who once ruled the underworld. He was now the guardian of the last of the Russo bloodline, the one who would continue the path Michael had laid, protecting Emily and Ava with every breath he had left. From this moment on, everything he did would be shaped by the truth Michael had carried alone, and the sacred responsibility that now rested entirely on him. Ava sat in her chair, her tiny hands trembling as she held out a small heart-shaped object to Vincent. The overhead light glimmered across the polished surface of the USB, casting soft reflections on her innocent face. She didn't fully understand what it meant. Not really, but she knew it was important, something Michael wanted Vincent to have. Vincent took it carefully, feeling the unexpected heaviness of it settle into his palm. His heartbeat deepened, steady and strong, echoing the gravity of the moment. He turned the USB over, its simple exterior betraying nothing of what he knew. It held an entire vault of information Michael had gathered in silence to protect his family. Vincent drew a long breath, his eyes fixed on the heart-shaped design. Memories of Michael rose with painful clarity, late-night conversations, the secrets his son never shared, the questions Vincent never pushed hard enough to ask. And now here it was, Michael's final gift, his way of guarding Emily and Ava even after death. Vincent plugged the USB into his laptop. The screen lit up instantly, revealing rows of folders, each meticulously labeled, encrypted, organized with a precision only Michael possessed. Inside was more than financial records. There were complete dossiers on threats, documents about the organization known as Pharaoh, details of those hunting the family. With each folder he opened, Vincent felt a confusing mix of pride and dread. Every file was a quiet confession, a piece of truth Michael had shielded from the world. Vincent clicked on a text document. The first line was a cipher handwritten by Michael, accompanied by step-by-step instructions. A whisper caught in Vincent's throat as he read. Michael had left a map, a guide for whoever held the USB, crafted with meticulous care. Every password, every sequence of files, every caution showed Michael's foresight, not just for safety, but to ensure that the person holding this device understood the weight of the responsibility, the sacrifice, the love. Emily stood beside him, holding Ava close, watching each click of Vincent's fingers. Her voice trembled. He left all of this for us? Vincent nodded, eyes still locked on the screen. Yes, Michael knew that only with this information could we protect you, protect Ava. This is his legacy, his way of staying alive by keeping his family safe. Ava widened her eyes, not fully grasping the meaning but sensing the gravity in Vincent's tone. Almost instinctively, she tightened her grip on the heart-shaped USB before placing it gently back, in Vincent's hands. Vincent opened deeper folders, notes on Pharaoh's movements, plans, evidence of criminal operations, enemies' names, alliances, betrayals. Everything Michael had discovered lay here like a blueprint of survival. A pressure settled deep in Vincent's chest. This was no longer just information, it was the fate of their family. He sat beside Ava and looked into her trusting amber eyes, the same shade as Michael's. His voice was steady, powerful. Do you understand, Ava? This is why Michael left this with you. And why from now on, our purpose is to protect you and Emily, to protect what's left of the Russo family. Emily swallowed hard, her chest tightening with fear and gratitude. She realized Michael hadn't simply helped them, he had built an entire defense system around them, a hidden fortress of information, and now it was theirs to maintain. Vincent created secure copies, set up secondary passwords, and explained to Emily how to guard and use the breed information. His voice remained firm, unwavering. We take this one step at a time. No panic. Every action must be deliberate. This USB is your lifeline, your protection against the world Michael fought to shield you from. Silence filled the room, thick with the weight of shared grief and rising hope. Vincent finally looked up at Emily and Ava, understanding that from the instant Ava handed him that heart-shaped USB, everything had shifted. Every choice, every plan, every breath had to revolve around protecting this gift, this knowledge, this bloodline. The three of them would have to walk the path Michael had carved, quiet, strategic, rooted in love. Vincent Russo drove the black SUV through the empty Brooklyn streets, Emily clutching Ava in the back seat. The little girl stared at the heart-shaped USB in her lap, unaware of how drastically it had changed their lives. Vincent felt the weight of it all pressing against his ribs, the responsibility of honoring Michael's final act and unraveling the truth he left behind. They turned into the southern industrial district, where abandoned warehouses loomed like silent sentinels. Streetlights flickered against the wet concrete as the SUV slowed before a massive storage facility. Tall fences, security cameras, sterile beams of artificial light, all reminders of the danger that lived beyond the gates. Vincent glanced back at Emily and Ava. His voice carried the gravity of a lifeline. We must be careful. Every step matters. We cannot afford a single mistake. Emily nodded, clutching her daughter, her eyes a blend of fear and quiet determination. Vincent stepped out first, swiping the access card Michael had once handed him. The steel door slid open with a metallic hiss. The air smelled of dust and old chemicals. Inside stretched rows of storage rooms, neatly stacked boxes, and numbered shelves. Vincent's footsteps echoed as he approached Unit 347, the number Michael had marked for him. His heart quickened. Behind him, Emily listened anxiously. Ava held the USB closer to her chest, somehow sensing the meaning woven into this moment. Vincent inserted the USB into his laptop. The screen glowed. He entered the password, each letter and number following Michael's sequence. A soft click broke the silence as the electronic lock disengaged. The safe swung open. Inside was an archive, folders, hard drives, handwritten notes, documents organized into a carefully structured collection. Vincent opened them one by one. Reports, transaction logs, files on Mafia alliances, detailed notes on Pharaoh and their network. It was the truth, every piece Michael had gathered to one day dismantle the threat that hovered over Emily and Ava. Emily froze as she saw the documents. Her breath caught at the sight of surveillance photos, receipts, coded transcripts, medical reports, even small mementos Michael had kept for Ava. Her voice cracked. He left everything for us? Vincent nodded, never looking, away from the documents. Everything. Months of work, risk, danger, all so you and Ava could live. Ava looked up, her big amber eyes glimmering as if sensing the importance. Vincent organized each file, labeling, sorting, building structure from chaos. His voice carried the calm of a man accepting a sacred burden. We take this slow. No missteps. This is how Michael protects you from the grave. And now it is our duty. Emily held Ava tighter, feeling both fear and gratitude swelling within her. She realized they were stepping fully into the world Michael once navigated, the world he shielded them from. Vincent picked up a hard drive, turning toward them with steady resolve. Everything he left behind will guide us. And from now on, no one, no enemy, no organization will touch you or the child. This is Michael's final legacy, and we will protect it. Emily's eyes glistened with tears as she whispered her thanks. Ava clutched the USB, sensing that life as she knew it had changed forever. Vincent watched them silently, aware that this was only the beginning. The threats outside were real, the responsibility enormous. But now they had the key, Michael's final gift, the blueprint for survival. And Vincent vowed silently, fiercely, that nothing, no one, would take it from them. Vincent had just finished securing the files inside a waterproof case when Tony leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as the laptop screen updated with incoming data pulled from the surveillance feeds. His voice dropped into a low, urgent register. "Boss, we've got an internal problem." Vincent lifted an eyebrow, a sharp pulse striking beneath his ribs as instinctive caution surged through him. Emily tightened her hold around Ava, sensing the tension radiating off Vincent. Tony dragged his cursor across multiple recordings from hidden cameras feeds Marcus had been controlling for years. His voice shook. "Look at this, Marcus. The man we trusted for 15 years. Your day, the most loyal driver. He's been sending our location data and schedules straight to Pharaoh." Vincent felt his heart stop cold. He stood frozen, staring at the screen, the images stark and undeniable. Every movement Emily and Ava made, every time Vincent left the storage facility, every phone call, every route, they had all been meticulously logged by Marcus and passed to the enemy. He didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was irrefutable. Tony clicked into a thread of messages, timestamps, coded coordinates, all sent to a number now confirmed to belong to Pharaoh. A wave of fury rolled through Vincent, hot and electric. Marcus had been Pharaoh's inside man for a long time, and now his betrayal threatened the lives of Emily, Ava, and the entire Russo bloodline. Emily pulled Ava closer, her shoulders trembling. Vincent turned toward her, his eyes gleaming with a hard, cold light. His voice was low but commanding. "We deal with this immediately. No mistakes. Marcus is a direct threat. From this moment on, every move we make must be calculated." Tony continued, laying out every file, proof that Marcus hadn't simply betrayed them recently, but had been updating Pharaoh for months. Every schedule, every brush with the FBI, every safe house transition had fallen straight into Marcus's hands. Vincent's heartbeat hammered, anger tangled with a deep, personal disappointment. Marcus had not betrayed them out of fear or desperation, but out of long-term strategy. He had waited for the perfect moment to hand everything to Pharaoh, ready to dismantle the plans Vincent and Michael had risked everything to build. Emily looked up at Vincent, fear and determination warring in her eyes. She whispered, "What do we do now?" Vincent crouched slightly to meet Ava's gaze, those innocent amber eyes reflecting trust he didn't deserve but vowed to protect. His voice was steady, unwavering. "We take control. First, Marcus must be cut off from all access. He can't get near anything related to us ever again." Tony nodded and immediately began drafting countermeasures, parallel surveillance routes, shadow teams, contingency plans. Vincent paced the warehouse in deep thought, his mind taut like a drawn bowstring. Marcus knew Vincent's habits, his instincts, his pressure points that made him even more dangerous. Vincent couldn't act blindly, but he couldn't wait either. Tony opened the most recent audio log. Marcus's voice filled the room, clear and precise, reporting Vincent's location, confirming Emily and Ava's movements, listing times, routes, and targets for Pharaoh. Vincent clenched his fist so tightly his knuckles cracked. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was lethal. He inhaled slowly, voice cold as steel. "We recheck every security layer, change every password. Prepare for the possibility Marcus tries to reach us. And most importantly, keep our location invisible. No one but me knows the safe house coordinates. Our next move must be silent." Emily held Ava close, feeling Vincent's resolve settle around them like armor. Tony executed the plan swiftly, scanning every corner of the warehouse, ears tuned for anything out of place. Vincent looked at Emily and Ava, his voice deep and firm. "We don't have another option. Marcus betrayed us. But we still have each other. From this point forward, every decision revolves around protecting your daughter and making sure nothing falls into Pharaoh's hands. This responsibility is ours now, and we will not fail." The warehouse fell into thick silence, broken only by the laptop's faint hum and Ava's soft, steady breathing. Vincent felt the weight settle onto his shoulders. Marcus's betrayal was a warning. No one was fully trustworthy. Yet it also fueled his determination. He would prepare for every threat, every shadow that dared approach his family or trespass on Michael's legacy. Vincent had just reinforced the safe house's new security protocols, his gaze sweeping across the wall of monitors. Emily stood near Ava, holding her tightly, the air tense enough to vibrate. Suddenly, a loud metallic crash erupted from the gate, heavy blows, hurried footsteps. Vincent stiffened instantly. "This isn't a drill," he muttered. Emily clutched Ava tighter as her heartbeat thundered. Vincent rushed to the window. Outside, dark figures were forcing the gate, shadows bending under the flicker of motion sensor lights. Marcus was nowhere in sight, but the internal breach had primed Vincent for this moment. He stepped back, pulling out his Glock, gripping it with deliberate calm. The pounding on the metal intensified. Emily whispered, "Mr. Russo, they're here." Vincent nodded once, eyes locked on the entrance, his chest tight with adrenaline. "Emily, take Ava to the safe room. Lock the door, activate the false alarm system, it'll throw them off. I'll handle the rest." Emily scooped Ava into her arms and rushed toward the stairs. Vincent scanned the warehouse, mapping every shadow, every blind spot. The gate tore open. The invaders swarmed in, faces masked, their movements sharp and trained. Glass shattered, metal clanged, echoes ricocheting through the space. Vincent fired a warning shot skyward, forcing them to pause. Only a heartbeat, and then they surged again. Vincent moved with controlled precision, using side corridors Michael had once shown him. Each step was designed to buy Emily and Ava more time. He tracked one intruder splitting off, trying to flank. A swift, accurate strike sent the man crashing to the floor. Vincent refused to let anyone near the safe room. Emily and Ava's breaths echoed faintly through the comm system, shaky but alive. Vincent whispered, "Stay calm, Emily. Keep her close. I'll get you both out." Footsteps thundered deeper into the warehouse. Vincent slipped between shadows, using the flickering lights as cover. He fired warning shots, never revealing his exact position. The invaders split again, pushing into the main chamber. Vincent pretended to retreat, drawing them into a narrow junction where their numbers gave him no advantage. Sharp, controlled shots, confusion, fear. He seized the moment, took them down swiftly, methodically. Emily raced down the back stairs, Ava clinging to her neck. Vincent shielded them, firing another warning burst that forced the remaining intruders to fall back. Emily ran through the rear exit toward the SUV Tony had staged outside the fence. Vincent pulled back, sealing the safe room behind them and checking every corridor for stragglers. When he finally reached the vehicle, sweat soaked his back, his heartbeat thundering, but Emily and Ava were safe. That was all that mattered. He paused beside the SUV, his breathing steadying as he looked at them, Emily trembling, Ava wide-eyed but unharmed. Vincent knew this was only the beginning. The first real strike, the first real test. But as he watched the women Michael had died to protect, a fierce, unwavering promise hardened inside him. Michael had fought quietly for them. Now it was Vincent's turn. He would take every blow, fight every enemy, burn every bridge if he had to. For Emily, for Ava, for Michael's blood. And he would never let anyone harm them. As soon as Emily and Ava were pulled out of the immediate line of danger, Vincent's phone vibrated. The screen lit up with Pharaoh's name. His voice, warm but coiled with venom, spilled through the speaker. "Vincent Russo, I hear you've had quite an exciting evening." His tone was cold enough to skim across skin like ice. Vincent tightened his grip on the phone, his entire body wound like a drawn bowstring. Tony stood beside him, every muscle tense. Pharaoh continued, "I'm giving you two choices. Hand over every piece of evidence Michael left behind, the USB, the files, everything tied to the organization, and in return, Emily Carter and her precious little girl will remain safe. If not, the outcome will be quite devastating. He stretched the last word with deliberate cruelty. A chill shot down Vincent's spine. He glanced toward the car where Emily sat with Ava curled tightly against her, the child's eyes squeezed shut, innocent and unaware. His chest tightened painfully. He drew a breath, his voice low and cold. "You know I will never hand anything over to a man who threatens my family." Pharaoh let out a mocking laugh, all arrogance and brutality. "Think carefully, Vincent. This is your one chance. A single mistake, and those two women will never see the morning sun again. I don't bluff. I don't forgive. I know every one of your weaknesses, and now I intend to use them." Vincent felt each heartbeat as though it were striking him from the inside. Emily bent over Ava, whispering, "You're okay. Sweetheart, don't be scared. We're getting out of here." But Vincent knew Pharaoh meant every word he said. He scanned the car again, every breath Emily took, every small movement Ava made suddenly weighed more than all the power he had ever held. Pharaoh's voice slithered through the phone again. "You have 2 hours to decide. No more, and I will know if you try to deceive me. Any attempt at games, and the consequences will be catastrophic. Don't test me, Russo." His words vibrated through the speaker quiet, but soaked in authority and contempt. Vincent pressed his palm against the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the silent street outside. A wrong move could cost Emily and Ava their lives. He inhaled deeply, forcing clarity back into his mind. Pharaoh was playing psychological warfare, pressure, manipulation. But Vincent had lived his entire life in the shadows. He knew how to turn pressure into strategy. He met Tony's gaze and gave a sharp nod. The message was clear. No panic, no impulsive choices. Use every advantage. Protect Emily and Ava first, then regain control. Pharaoh gave a final sneer, his voice slicing through the air. "Remember, Russo, I don't need to justify anything. I only need results. You give me what I want, or they die. Simple." Vincent steadied his voice, sharpened it. "I will not give you anything, Pharaoh. But I will not let them be harmed. Every action I take from this moment on is to protect Emily and Ava. And if you want what Michael left, you'll have to face me yourself. You will not threaten them again." A brief pause, then a cold laugh. "Very well, let's play, Russo. But remember, time is slipping away, and every second is their life. There will be no second chances." The line went dead, leaving only a dull beep in the silence. Vincent lowered the phone, his hand tightening around the wheel. The resolve in his eyes hardened to steel. The game had begun. There was no retreat now, only forward, through fire if necessary. Every thought centered on Emily and Ava. He would do whatever it took, prepare each step, flip the board in his favor, and ensure no one touched the 2 lives he had sworn to protect. Vincent closed his eyes, drew a long breath, and pressed the accelerator. The SUV cut through Brooklyn's empty rain-slicked streets. The phone was silent now, but Tony's tense stare told him they were being watched. Every move monitored, every choice measured. Vincent glanced back at Emily. His voice was low, unwavering. "We'll go to the rooftop, but I won't let them touch Ava." Emily hugged her daughter closer, tension etched into her features, but faith settled in her eyes. Ava furrowed her brow, sensing her mother's fear. Vincent continued. "Tony set up backup routes. Every escape option, every hallway. I want to know every inch of their movement." Streetlights flashed across his face, focused, sharp, unbreakable. When they reached the abandoned building Pharaoh had chosen, Vincent stepped out first. Emily carried Ava in her arms. They climbed the narrow stairwell. Vincent checked, every shadow, his hand close to his Glock. Their footsteps echoed through the empty structure. They reached the rooftop, cold wind whipping across the concrete, rain drifting in thin sheets. In the distance stood Marcus, flanked by Pharaoh's men. Vincent's jaw clenched. They thought they were staging a surrender. They had no idea what he was planning. He murmured to Emily, "We'll play his game, but by my rules." Marcus approached with a smirk, unaware of the ambush coiled behind Vincent's calm. Vincent moved toward the roof's edge, making it appear he was ready to hand everything over. His fingers tightened around the phone. "I give you the USB and the files. I want them safe." Pharaoh's voice echoed through a speakerphone held by one of the men. "Hand them over, Russo, or they die." Vincent inhaled, letting the moment stretch, every sense tuned to the smallest shift in movement. As Marcus extended his hand to take the USB, Vincent struck swift, brutal, perfectly timed. He knocked Marcus off balance, ripped his weapon away, and fired a warning shot that forced the others to scatter. He pulled Emily and Ava toward a shielded corner of the roof, using broken vents and concrete rails as cover. Emily looked at him with wide, trembling eyes. Vincent whispered, "You're safe. I'll get you out." Then he dropped a smoke canister at their feet. It burst open, flooding the rooftop with thick white fog. Using the chaos, Vincent moved with the strength of a younger man and the instinct of a seasoned fighter, striking down anyone who tried to cut through the smoke. Emily clutched Ava and tucked into a corner. Vincent sprinted to a maintenance pipe, ripped it open, and pulled them toward it. In seconds, the three of them slipped inside. An escape ballet performed in the space between bullets and breath. Their pursuers choked on smoke, stumbling blindly. Vincent guided them down the narrow metal steps. Rain and wind roared above them. When they reached the lower floor, he pushed Emily forward. "Go! Tony's waiting with the car." Emily dashed through the hallway, Ava in her arms. Outside, Tony and 2 loyal guards stood ready. Vincent stayed behind, covering their retreat, firing precision shots to push the remaining attackers back. Emily and Ava made it into the SUV. Vincent paused long enough to see Ava safe in her mother's arms. Only then did he retreat through a secondary exit, every movement calculated using shadows, distance, sound, and terrain to gain the upper hand. Marcus and Pharaoh's remaining men tried to pursue, but Vincent's preparations were too tight, too precise, every trap laid exactly where it needed to be. Ava and Emily were alive. That, for now, was victory. As Vincent descended through the building's dark stairwell, his breath heavy but his mind razor-sharp, he whispered to himself, "Michael left the blueprint. Now I carry it out. No one touches them. No one destroys what my son protected." From rooftop to parking lot, every footstep was deliberate, every decision a shield, because one mistake could cost Emily and Ava everything. But Vincent Russo, in all his years of darkness, had never been more determined, more lethal, or more certain of his purpose than he was now. When Emily and Ava were moved into temporary safety, an explosion thundered from the rooftop, shaking the entire block. Flames burst upward, black smoke curling violently into the sky. Through his binoculars, Vincent watched, his heart seeming to stop as Marcus, the man he had trusted for years, was thrown from the roof, his body slamming against the concrete below, motionless. For the briefest moment, Marcus's eyes were wide and empty, the last flicker of life leaving him. Pharaoh's face appeared instantly on Vincent's phone screen, his voice dripping with triumph. "See, Russo? I told you I'm the one who controls everything, and now your family knows exactly who holds the power." Vincent's fingers tightened around the phone, the blood thrumming at his temples, his vision narrowing with rage, but he refused to let emotion take the wheel. He knew he had to act. Tony's voice came over the radio, low and urgent. "Boss, Marcus is down. Pharaoh's staging it like a surrender, but we're seeing signs of an ambush." Vincent inhaled, his voice steady as stone. "Hold the line, Tony. We're going to turn his own plan against him. Keep Emily and Ava protected at all costs. It's time I use everything Michael left behind." He reached for the phone preloaded with the audio from the heart-shaped USB. With a single tap, Michael's recorded voice filled the air, every detail about routes, names, corrupt transactions, and criminal acts Pharaoh believed he had buried forever. Pharaoh had never known Michael's final conversations, his private files, his contingency plans, all captured, encrypted, preserved. Vincent issued commands. Tony and the loyal guards tightened the perimeter, surrounding Emily and Ava with a living shield. Pharaoh's every move was tracked through the network of cameras and sensors Michael had built while fighting his own silent war. Vincent's eyes stayed fixed on the monitors, his face carved with calm control. When Pharaoh swaggered forward to surrender to law enforcement, Vincent pressed play. Michael's voice boomed through the loudspeakers, exposing every crime Pharaoh had committed: human trafficking routes, money laundering networks, his orchestration of Michael's assassination, and his manipulation of Marcus. One damning detail after another. Pharaoh froze, eyes widening as he realized the trap had been closing around him long before tonight. Vincent glanced toward Emily and Ava, safe, protected, untouched, and a faint, weary smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Pharaoh's excuses tumbled out, desperate, frantic, but every recording cut him off, each revelation more damaging than the last. Agents moved in quickly. Weapons were drawn. Pharaoh was surrounded. Justice, long delayed, finally approached. Vincent stood behind armored vehicles, shielding Emily and Ava with his own presence. Pharaoh was tackled to the ground, fighting, screaming orders that no longer meant anything. Every plotted attack against Emily and Ava had fallen apart in his hands. Vincent's heartbeat eased for the first time that night, slow, heavy, full of something that felt like relief. Marcus was gone, sacrificed in the chaos, but his death cracked open a path to turn the war upside down. Pharaoh's empire crumbled under the weight of Michael's evidence. Vincent lifted his gaze toward the dark sky. Flames on the rooftop were dying down, smoke thinning into the night air. He drew in a deep breath. This fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time in years, he felt that Michael's sacrifices had not been wasted. Emily and Ava were alive. The evidence was safe. Pharaoh would finally face the justice he owed. When Pharaoh was dragged away in cuffs and every piece of evidence was secured in Vincent's hands, he stepped forward, his eyes settling on Emily and Ava beside Tony and the loyal guards. The hardness in his gaze blended with something warmer, deeper. His voice, low but unwavering, broke through the tension. "If you want my cooperation, I have one condition. Emily and Ava must enter witness protection. Anyone who harms them answers with their life." Tony nodded immediately, contacting the FBI agents assigned to the case. Vincent continued, "I'll hand over everything Michael left, every file, every recording, every photograph, every transaction, all of it. But only in exchange for absolute, uncompromising protection for these two. No loopholes, no backdoor deals." Emily clutched Ava against her chest, her eyes tight with fear but filled with trust. Vincent looked at them, feeling the heavy swell of responsibility crushing down on him. He knew he wasn't just saving their lives, he was trying to repay the terrible debt of his past. His phone buzzed. The agent confirmed that witness protection had been approved. Vincent exhaled, a subtle but unmistakable release. "Good. That part's done. The rest is logistics. I'll see to it every piece of evidence is delivered to the right hands. Pharaoh and his allies won't escape a single charge, not one." He swept the room with a sharp, commanding gaze. Every FBI agent present understood this wasn't just another witness case, it was life or death. Vincent laid out the plan to relocate Emily and Ava. "We used the armored vehicle, a covert route, all tracking signals disabled. Only Tony and I know the destination." Emily met his eyes, her voice trembling but firm. "We're ready, just protect Ava." Vincent offered a small, solemn smile. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. "I gave my word, and I intend to keep it. For the rest of my life, no one will ever harm you again." The task force moved into action. Agents took their positions. Vincent oversaw every detail, no blind spots, no exposed angles, no room for infiltration. His stare burned with fierce resolve, not for power, not for vengeance, but for family. Emily and Ava, the only pieces of Michael left behind, were now the center of his universe. As the armored vehicle doors closed behind them, Vincent turned to Tony. "Steady speed, maximum vigilance." Then he addressed Emily one last time. "Don't take your eyes off your daughter. Whatever happens outside that window, trust me, you'll be safe." Ava hooked her tiny fingers around her mother's hand, her eyes wet but unafraid. Vincent watched them disappear into the rain-soaked distance, their silhouettes swallowed by mist and headlights. And in his chest, for the first time in years, something softened, something like peace, fragile but real. Power, money, revenge, none of it mattered anymore. Only family, only survival. Only the promise that Emily and Ava would someday live beyond the shadow of the Mafia, beyond fear, beyond the darkness that had consumed the Russo name. This time, Vincent vowed, his power would be used not to intimidate or destroy, but to protect, to make amends, to honor Michael. And as he stood alone beneath the dim streetlights, bruised and exhausted but unbroken, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Anyone who threatened them again would pay dearly, and he would never forgive it. Emily drove along the winding roads of Brookings, Oregon, where the blue of the ocean met the deep green of the pine forests, and soft golden sunlight fell over wooden rooftops in a serenity she had never known after years of living in darkness and danger. Ava sat in the back seat, her long hair fluttering in the breeze, her amber brown eyes still bright but now filled with curiosity and joy, pointing toward the distant shoreline with a delighted squeal. "Mama, look, the ocean." Emily smiled, resting her hand gently on her daughter's shoulder, releasing a long, quiet breath as if each step they took on the soft sand washed away the heavy memories that once suffocated them. From afar, Vincent monitored their arrival through secure communication, the faintest smile tugging at the edges of his usually stern expression, knowing that for the first time, they were truly safe. Emily found work at the small local hospital, tending to emergency patients in a clean, calm environment, miles away from the blaring alarms and relentless pressure she had endured in New York. Ava started preschool in the neighborhood, learning to make friends, to draw, to sing, each small activity becoming a balm for the scars she carried inside. At night, Emily told her stories about the sea, about birds and the rhythm of the waves. They collected shells together, laughing, and Ava slowly learned that her father Michael still lived in her heart, not as a shadow of fear, but as a warm, gentle memory. Vincent sometimes checked in through the encrypted line, reminding Emily to be careful but never interfering, allowing them to build a life of their own. Emily began to connect with the community, joining a book club, talking to neighbors, letting herself feel trust again. Ava learned to swim with a kind instructor, her laughter echoing across the water, and Emily would watch her, tears blurring her vision, knowing the past was finally falling away. Vincent watched too, from a distance, his chest swelling with pride and relief, understanding that Michael had protected them even in death, and that this quiet happiness was his son's final legacy. In the early mornings, Emily and Ava walked to the beach, breathing in the salty air, the wind brushing their faces clean of tension. They laughed, they ran, their footprints scattered across the sand. Emily taught Ava how to watch the waves, how to spot shells, how to enjoy the small miracles she once believed she would never have. At night, they sat on the porch beneath a sky full of stars, listening to the gentle roar of the ocean. Ava would ask about Grandpa Vincent, and Emily spoke of him with calm respect, never frightening her. Vincent occasionally appeared on video calls, making sure Ava was well, and the three of them shared smiles across the screen. Each peaceful moment felt like a reward for every sacrifice, every pain they had endured. Emily realized fear had finally been replaced with hope, and she vowed to protect Ava with all her heart. Vincent, watching from the shadows, knew he had fulfilled his last promise, keeping them safe, guarding them from every threat, even if he himself had to remain on the outside, holding the darkness at bay. Day by day, their new life in Brookings became real. Each laugh, each step on the sand, a testament to healing, to hope, to a beginning they had never dared to imagine. In his temporary office in New York, Vincent sat staring past the crowded streets below, though his mind was thousands of miles away with Emily and Ava. When his phone buzzed and the screen lit up with the name of an FBI agent, a cold stillness gripped him. A woman's voice came through the secure line, steady but urgent. "Mr. Russo, I'm sorry to disturb you, but this is an emergency concerning Ava. She needs a second bone marrow transplant. Her body is beginning to reject the previous donor's cells." Vincent felt his heart wrench, the image of little Ava sitting on a hospital bed, her bright amber eyes looking up at him through a video call, flooding his memory. His fists tightened, fighting back the storm rising inside him. "What do you mean? Why? Is she in danger again?" His voice wavered, but it remained firm. The agent explained that doctors in Oregon had run full diagnostics and confirmed escalating signs of rejection. No compatible donors existed in the national registry, no one except a direct blood relative. And genetically, Vincent was the only, perfect match. The truth struck him like a blow. He saw Michael in his mind, his son, who had saved Ava with his own marrow once before. Now it was Vincent's turn to continue that chain of sacrifice. "I understand," he said quietly, each word heavy with love and determination. "I'll do whatever it takes. I won't let anything happen to her. I'm the only match, prepare everything needed. But keep this operation fully secure. No one else can know." The agent emphasized the need for absolute protection during transport and extraction, because Ava, despite being hidden, was still a sensitive target if her location or condition leaked. Vincent immediately mobilized his security team, coordinating with authorized doctors, arranging secure transport, private surgical rooms, and round-the-clock medical oversight. The weight on his shoulders tightened, but beneath it was a fierce sense of purpose, a chance to redeem every failure of his past. His eyes drifted to a photo of Ava Emily had sent him, her smile bright and hopeful, and his pulse hardened with resolve. He whispered to himself that nothing, absolutely nothing, would harm her again. Speaking to the agent, his voice dropped into a deep, steady promise. "I'm coming to Brookings. I'll bring everything needed to guarantee their safety. I'll donate the marrow. But you must ensure that nobody, under any circumstance, gets near Emily or Ava. No exceptions." The agent confirmed preparations were underway, doctors ready, rooms secured. Vincent inhaled slowly, mentally mapping the safest routes from his office to the private airfield, from the airport to the Oregon hospital. Every detail had to be flawless. Any mistake could cost Ava her life. He imagined Emily holding Ava close, fear and hope tangled together in her eyes. He shut his own eyes for a moment, steadying himself. He had to do what Michael once did. He had to continue his son's legacy, protecting the little girl who carried their blood. His voice was steel when he whispered, "She will live. I'll protect her. Nothing will stop me." He pressed the emergency schedule button, arranging the private jet, the armored convoy, the medical team, every piece of the plan clicking into place with deadly precision. Vincent stood, ready to leave, his expression carved from determination and love. This transplant was more than a medical procedure, it was an act of devotion, the duty of a father and a grandfather, bound by blood and sacrifice. And no matter what danger lay ahead, he was prepared. For Ava, for family, always. Vincent stepped off the private jet, each footfall heavy but unwavering, the salty air of Brookings brushing against his face, reminding him that this was not New York with its violence and schemes, but a quiet place where Emily and Ava were finally beginning again. The armored vehicle waiting on the tarmac carried him directly to the private hospital, where the operating room had been prepared to perfection, doctors and nurses already in place. Emily stood there, with worry etched across her features, but beneath it was a clear trust in him. Ava lay on the bed, her amber brown eyes wide as she looked at him, innocence mingled with fear and hope. Vincent entered the room, his chest tightening, and leaned down, resting his hand on her small shoulder. "I'm here, sweetheart. Everything will be all right," he whispered, his voice low and warm. Emily held her daughter's hand, trembling between fear and hope. The doctors explained the marrow extraction process, every step needing speed and precision. Vincent took his seat, looking at Ava, and the little girl gave him a tiny smile, as if she already sensed the love and safety he carried. He closed his eyes for a moment, drawing in a deep breath to steady himself as memories of Michael and all he had lost washed through him, not as pain this time, but as a chance to make things right and protect what remained of their family. Needles, instruments, soft voices prepared around him. When the needle pierced his hip and the dull, deep ache spread through him, Vincent shut his eyes and repeated silently, "For Ava. For family." Ava watched him, her small hand reaching across the sheets to hold his, and Emily leaned close, tears sliding down her cheeks as she felt the unspoken love and sacrifice surrounding them. Vincent kept himself steady, knowing each passing minute brought Ava closer to survival. He remembered Michael doing the same for her years ago, and now it was his turn, the bloodline of their family continuing through marrow and devotion. The doctors worked gently, collecting the sample while Vincent stayed silent, every heartbeat echoing the rhythm of the little girl nearby. He heard the steady beeping of Ava's heart monitor, a sound that grounded him even as tension coiled in his chest. When the procedure ended, they guided him to rest, and he looked across the room at Ava's soft breathing, at the faint flush returning to her cheeks. Emily pulled her daughter into her arms, crying openly, and Vincent sat beside them, his own tears gathering but refusing to fall. Relief spread through him so deep, so unfamiliar it felt like a new kind of breath. The three of them sat together in an emotional silence, and Vincent felt life itself moving through Ava, the legacy of Michael and his own sacrifice intertwining. Emily whispered her gratitude, and Vincent only nodded, knowing that every bolt of suffering, every wound of the past had led them to this moment where they could finally love and live without fear. Ava squeezed his hand weakly. "Grandpa, I knew you would help me." Vincent smiled softly, eyes full of tenderness. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm always here to protect you." In that moment, every loss, every grief, every sacrifice found its meaning. Family and responsibility were bound together again. When Vincent left the operating room, sweat soaking through his shirt, there was a peace in him he had never known. He looked at Emily and Ava alive, safe, and knew that Michael's legacy had been preserved, that love and sacrifice truly had the power to pull them through every danger, and that from this moment on, Ava would have the chance to live fully, to grow up in protection and love. Vincent remained there, steady and silent, witnessing each smile, each breath, knowing this moment was proof of the legacy carried in every cell, every heartbeat, every fragile second of Ava's life. Years passed after the day Vincent Russo donated his bone marrow to Ava, and the quiet months drifted gently through the peace Emily and her daughter had reclaimed. Vincent, the man who once built an empire on fear and power, finally left this world at the age of 78, without violence, without noise, only the calm and gentle stillness he had earned after a lifetime shaped by loss and impossible choices. Emily continued sending him long letters, telling him about their life in Brookings, Oregon, where forest met ocean and peace felt like something you could hold in your hands. She wrote about Ava growing strong, carefree, going to school, playing with friends, swimming in her morning classes, taking small but steady steps into a life she once nearly lost. She wrote of evenings spent with neighbors, of simple dinners, of bedtime stories told beneath a warm lamp, of the way Ava now knew about her grandfather and cherished the legacy of love Michael and Vincent had left her. Emily reminded him in every letter that love and sacrifice were the most precious gifts people could offer one another. Vincent was no longer there to see her grow, but his legacy lived on in every smile Ava shared, every milestone she reached, every act of tender care Emily gave her child. The story ends, but the lesson echoes on. Power and money can build a world, but it is love, sacrifice, and family that remain when everything else fades. To all of you watching, if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, like and share the video so you won't miss the emotional stories we share every day. We would love to hear your thoughts, your honest feelings about this story, the lessons it offered, the human values it carried. Share them with us so together we can spread more compassion in this world. Thank you, and see you in the next video. Wishing every one of you good health, joy, peace, and serenity in your daily life. And always remember, love and family are the most precious gifts we can give and receive. Goodbye, and until next time.